Okay. Yeah, so thank you to our guest speakers for introducing yourselves. Before we move on, we do want to acknowledge we know that the college search and criteria looks different for everyone, depending on your experience. We might have some young adults here who are very newly diagnosed versus people like me who have had it for years. And then we have the caregiver experience versus the young adult experience is going to look very different, what that those kind of preparations are going to look like. So we'd love to get a sense of where everyone is on their journey. If you just want to introduce yourself really quickly in the chat, let us know where you are in your college search process, where you are in your diabetes diagnosis journey. Yeah, we'd love to learn more about you. All right. So while people are responding in the chat, we're going to go ahead and kick off with our first topic, which is the college search itself. So for each of our guest speakers, we want to know more what the college search looked like for you. At the Diabetes Link, we believe that diabetes shouldn't be a barrier to going to college. It shouldn't need to limit your lifestyle and your choices, but it is going to factor into it. And it is going to make things look a little bit different for you than it is for other people. So for our panelists, what were your must-haves when you were thinking about what colleges to go to, when you were touring schools? And these can be both diabetes related and non-diabetes related. So for instance, were you focused on schools with the proximity to home? Were you focused on certain majors, extracurriculars, location, a disability support community on campus? What were those criteria? What did those look like for you?
All right, I'll go first. So funny fact is I live 5 minutes from my campus, so I'm very close by. But when I was first applying to schools, I was intending to go into nursing, so I was looking at schools that were close to me that had a good nursing program, which was obviously TCNJ, and then I looked at Cabrini as well. And then I also looked at Arcadia, but they don't have a nursing program, but that's besides the point. And then I was also looking for the diabetes factor as well. So just like if they had like, I don't know, like accessibility for like accommodations and stuff like that. And I also learned about College Diabetes Network, which was this organization's former name, from my endocrinologist. So that's what I was also looking for.
Um, so when I was looking for colleges, I was looking mostly like in state. So I'm from Virginia. So like in state or like around Virginia. So like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, South Carolina, like all of that, like East Coast. I also was like looking mainly at like medium to smaller size liberal arts colleges because I really like wanted to kind of like dip my toe into like a lot of different fields, even though like I kind of knew I wanted to do like the pre-health track, but I wasn't sure exactly if that was like chem, bio, neuroscience, like everything like that. And then I also have like other autoimmune disorders. So like the healthcare aspect was really important to me for like being close to home in case of like an emergency. So I like really think like my distance from home, about 2.5 hours, has been like really crucial for me and like my well-being. Additionally, like my school's health center is like in the middle of our campus. So it makes it like very accessible for students. There's also like a pharmacy within that health center, which makes it like really great to like pick up prescriptions because I know we all have so much fun picking up our prescriptions. And pharmaceutical issues are fantastic. But so that was like one thing for me, kind of also just like our student accessibility services was a really great program that like I kind of knew I wanted to like venture into for other issues. So definitely all of those things.
Yeah, for me also, um, Virginia in-state colleges were sort of my general search criteria. I branched out a little bit, but I sort of was like, first thing was, public in-state, just from a price standpoint. Um, Also, I think proximity did factor into that. I didn't want to go to college, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road. Just, from a desire to have some independence, but also I wound up at college about 2 hours from my parents live and where I grew up. So I think that was a perfect distance for me. Truth be told, I didn't really know much about the services in terms of accessibility or health services, except I knew UVA had a hospital. So I was like, oh, okay. So as long as, there's a big hospital and I imagine all the, accessory stuff because it's just kind of going to work out. So I probably didn't give that as much thought as I possibly could have. Um, but I think, and, just my search criteria was primarily related to cost, distance, but those were more personal, not strictly diabetes related factors.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I'm noticing some common themes for you guys talking about like um, choosing to go further away versus closer to home, depending on if you were wanting to seek out more independence or if you wanted a little bit more of that support from home. So I'm curious to know more for each of our guest speakers about your support network as you were looking for colleges specifically. Um, so besides your parents and caregivers, was there anyone in particular in your support network who was very valuable as you were narrowing down those colleges? So maybe that was a guidance counselor, maybe that was a diabetes or disability community. And then for you and your parents and caregivers, what conversations and concerns were top of mind as you were getting ready to venture out of your usual support network?
For me, I had one valuable resource was my endocrinologist and diabetes educator because I was diagnosed right before I started high school, so it was still very fresh when I was applying to college. So they were very valuable in like explaining how different schools have like different resources and like how you need a letter and then you can get the things that you need like a fridge or anything like that. Um, as well as, let's see. Mm, yeah, and I also had a couple classmates since I'm so close to my school that were also going to TCNJ. So I thought I would already know some people going with diabetes, which I thought was helpful as well.
For me, I would also just say like my parents were so helpful like during my college search process. Um, they were they helped me like splurge a little bit and I got like a college admissions counselor, which I know um helped me like write my essays and like help strategize like the wording of my application and everything like that. But I know that that is not with like realistic for everyone. I would also say like I relied very heavily on my doctors as well, non-diabetic related, but like getting like medical help and advice like from your caregivers is like very, I would say like essential and very helpful no matter what like diagnosis it is. Um, I also relied on like some of my friends in high school who were like because I was on my high school swim team, so I was like very fortunate to be able to like make friends with people who were like great in the grades above me. So like being able to like hear their experience from them, being from like the same high school, taking the same type of classes was really helpful for me. So kind of like broadening your horizons with like people outside of your grade in high school. And then I have a twin sister, so um kind of we went through the whole process together, and it was really helpful to have someone by my side. But again, I know that like family dynamic is looks different for everyone during the college application process.
Yeah, and I realized I never mentioned this earlier, but I've had type 1 for 22 years. So I think, so by the time I was doing the um, search process in high school, um, and, also very personal to me, I don't know if anyone, where people are on their own sort of journey with this, but I was sort of thinking I didn't really think about diabetes as like a thing that was impacting my search, right? And I think that is um, something that everyone is going to feel differently about at different, phases in their life and things of that nature. But so in terms of my support network, um, where I was, you know, searching, I was talking with my parents, I was talking with family members, um, I was talking with my guidance counselors. Um, but truth be told, I didn't have a lot of people around me, and that I was talking about college with, that also had diabetes that could also sort of provide a perspective. Um, so I think when it came to um, trying to factor in like as someone living with diabetes, like what supports should I have? Who should I be asking? What questions should I ask? What questions should I be asking? I think I did turn to like my endocrinologist and that one of those last visits before I went off to college.
Yeah, thank you all. It's so interesting hearing about like your different support networks and what that looks like. And um, obviously, yeah, parents and caregivers are super helpful, but there's also some of those less traditional sources of support, like your endo or friends who have diabetes. Like Abby, I love hearing that you had friends with diabetes in high school that you were able to kind of talk with and get their support. But obviously that's not the case for everyone. And that's part of what we try to do here at the Link is make sure that everyone has access to a support community on their college campus, wherever they decide to go, or that they have the opportunity to start one and build one from the ground up. Um, so yeah, it's super cool to hear about the different sources of support that you guys had. I'd love for you all to talk a little bit more about the application process and what that looked like, since I know that's top of mind for so many of our juniors here right now. I'm sure they're deep into the essay writing and the Common App and all that fun stuff that we remember. So for each of you, what did your application process look like? First, in terms of testing, since I know that's a big thing, is trying to apply for accommodations for the SAT and ACT. Did any of you choose to do that or not choose to do that? And then why or why not? And then for your essay specifically, I'm curious to know if any of you chose to write about diabetes and your experience in your Common App or any of your essays.
So I took both the ACT and the SAT, and I had accommodations for both of those. I just liked having like the time and a half, like I don't know, because I just like taking my time when I take tests, and that's a benefit of having an accommodation. But I ended up not submitting my SAT because I was like in the COVID area, like 2020, 2021. But I still did take those tests anyway. And then for the application process, I did write about diabetes. That was my topic of my essay because it related to what I want to do, which is to be like a pediatric diabetes educator slash like pediatric nurse. So that was connected to what I wanted to do. So I thought it would be a cool way to integrate both of those things.
This question is like a little bit different for me because I didn't have diabetes at the time when I was going through my test taking process. I took the ACT first, realized it didn't really work well with me, so I started like taking the SAT a little bit more. I have accommodations now at William and Mary. I have 100% extended time where I can like pause and go back, which is really nice. Like if I run into an issue with my blood sugar. And I would say if I had type 1, like at the time going through my like test taking journey, I would have 100% like gone for like having accommodations like time and a half too. Like even like I'll go to exams like nowadays and like won't even use my extended time, but it's so comforting to like know that it's there. And I would say the same would apply in college and high school too. Um, And then I did not write about diabetes in my essay because I, again, didn't have it at the time. But I am planning on applying to med school, and I do want to incorporate diabetes into like my writing there because I think that like there's so like this is one thing that I talk about in my like chapter of my club so much is like diabetes is a part of your identity and it's like part of who you are. But like again, there's so many other pieces of your identity that make up who you are, not just having diabetes. Um, so like when it comes to like writing about that, like of course like that's something that like speaks to part of your identity, but like I would say like just because you have diabetes does not mean you have to write about it. I think that there's a lot of different ways to like show who you are, like show your identity in other ways as well. But yeah, I think it's mostly I'm gonna write about it because it pertains to like the health care field. Like Abby said, like it's pertaining to what like we want to do in the future. But that's like my take on all of that.
So for SAT, ACT, I did not apply for accommodations. At the time, I was really not good about wearing my sensor because, I was in high school and it was really annoying. Um, and so I mentioned that I'll come back to why I mentioned that, but essentially of course looking back wish I had because I pretty much just like ran high the whole time. Like I would just check my blood sugar on section breaks and just hope for the best. And looking back, that was a little naive. But just to say, my experience was that I did not apply for accommodations for the SAT or the ACT. Um, that said, I did take the MCAT to apply to medical school starting in May. Um, Also, just worth noting how like all three of us want to go into healthcare, which I think is not an uncommon experience for a lot of people with diabetes, which I think is cool. People with diabetes do all sorts of things, but I think a lot of us are drawn to healthcare, which is sidebar, but I think it's cool. Um, for the MCAT, the process was, you don't specify, like, you can specify, does your accommodation include extra time? Does it include this, that? I don't get extra time on my MCAT. But all I did was, I want a place to take my test where if my sensor goes off, I won't get myself invalidated. And I want to have water and a snack in case I go low, which would normally not be allowed in that testing environment. But I will be totally transparent and say that I came to that realization super late. So I took um, the MCAT one time without any accommodations and it sucked. Again, ran high the whole time because I wasn't wearing my sensor because I, was scared of going low and I, didn't um, give myself all the tools. So that said, a lot of just want to know that these processes take way longer than they should. But nonetheless, it's worth looking into way ahead of schedule because a lot of it requires documentation and time for them to review it, and maybe you have to appeal decisions. So, my only piece of advice on that front is give it tons of time. In terms of diabetes in my essays, I did not write about diabetes in my essays. Again, I think, where I was at in my life with thinking about diabetes as a part of who I am versus a thing that I had versus can it be both of those things, whatever. Um, and I think I put one line at the very end of my Common App, like, oh yeah, I also have diabetes. I didn't really elaborate on that, but, looking back, I probably could have, but so I did not incorporate it into my essays really at all.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Quick little change here. Peyton had to go, diabetes. So I'm Andrea, for those who don't know. But our next question for our panel is about on-campus support and resources. So you guys have already talked a lot about like the support you got at home before and kind of during the process. What did you think about when it came to support for getting to campus? Was there different things that you were looking for or steps you took to like kind of hopefully ensure your success when you got to campus? Did you talk to the Disability Services Center? Did you look for certain groups of students, certain programs? What did that look like? What were you thinking about wanting for support on campus?
For on-campus support, I was just looking for like them to like have like a health area, like a health center type place, like that I could go to in case I needed something, or like a place like a disability office. Like we have like an ARC center, which is like an accessibility resource center, and it's like for everybody with a disability or whatever you need accommodations for. And then I also, my mom was very involved in that aspect as well because she joined all like the parent groups and stuff like that. And she actually met some of my friends' parents on there. And that's how we got connected because we both had diabetes. Um, and then also I have some support at school from my friends because they like to follow my Dexcom app and they always text me, "Oh, you're low, you're high, blah blah blah." They sometimes text me more than my parents do. So, but it was really just finding like the right fit, I guess. Just having that extra background with the services and then just me like telling everybody like so they're aware of it. Like I know some people don't like to share it that they have diabetes, but I think about it if more people know, then if there's an emergency, more people can help you. So that's what I thought about.
So my beginning of my freshman year of college was a huge mess because I got diagnosed 2 weeks before moving day on my like family vacation. So I didn't even like go to the like I went through like ketoacidosis like in like a completely different hospital like out of state. So I was very nervous like dealing with this new diagnosis on top of like just moving into college. My parents were also very freaked out. So, in efforts of all of this anxiety, we definitely all kind of put like our effort into it. So, I would say freshman year for like moving in like fall semester, my parents went to like the student accessibility center like parents talk and like I got connected there and our SAS as they call it um is awesome. That's like how I get like my accommodations academically and then also like how I've been able to get housing accommodations too. So I would also say in part another great resource is like your housing team. So like residence life here, getting connected with them. Because I would say quality of living as a diabetic is also really important. But then like I also diabetic related wanted to join like a club of people who had diabetes and at my school that did not exist. So I founded our chapter of the Diabetes Link my fall of my freshman year, which was very overwhelming, but I'm so glad that I did it. I've made so many friends. We all just like get each other. It's a really great community that I'm really proud of. And then additionally, like one other thing that I kind of wanted to continue doing was like join and get involved in those things that I wanted to do previously before being diagnosed with type 1. So like I'm part of Greek life here on campus. I'm involved in club swim um, and everything like that, kind of having friends who like are from a lot of different like backgrounds, a lot of like different like, have other health issues. It's been like very uniting to like kind of be a part of a lot of different things. So I would say like advice for high schoolers and like maybe caregivers is like to really get involved. I know everyone says that like on your cliche college tours, but it's really important to kind of like put yourself out there. Like everyone is there to make friends in your freshman year. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say like for me in my experience, which I know looked a little bit different because I was newly diagnosed, but
Yeah, I think I was encouraged. If I truly, I don't even remember how it happened, but so this was after I'd already, gotten into UVA and decided I was going. I think it was my endocrinologist was like, you should, make an appointment with their Student Disability Accommodation Center, or we call it SDAC. And I was like, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. So I guess first thing is if this is informing your search, if you can't find a website from the university that you're considering with something about an accommodation center or a disability access center, that's a red flag. But I guess so, assuming that there is one of those, so I went to, it was the summer before I moved into, on grounds housing, and um, it was before my first year, so I met with um, an advisor there, and they were awesome. Like the whole team, I would say they really explained sort of what my options were in terms of services that I could get, which a lot of which I had never considered before. I didn't know time and a half was an extra thing. I didn't know that you could, you know, if you anyone like like just sort of list some of the things that she told me about that I didn't know. Time and a half, a dedicated transit service for students with disabilities if they're, for example, you had a low blood sugar right before you're supposed to leave for a class and you're like on the opposite side of campus. You're like, oh my God, how am I going to get there? Things like that. Um, Priority registration for classes because you want to build a class schedule that can accommodate sort of the routines and habits that you have used to take good care of yourself. And I did not get a car on grounds. That was first year students were not permitted to have a car, and we discussed it, and it didn't really fall into the profile of things that would um, assist me to really take better care of myself. It wasn't really justified, I guess, under that umbrella, which, worked out totally fine. Again, they offered a lot of transportation services on top of things that the university offered everyone. So that was awesome. Um, but again, in terms of timing, that was just something I did the summer before I started, and then something I was super grateful for the duration of my time in college.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I am back. I did have a pod failure, but we're all good now, so no worries there. Yeah, it's great to hear you guys talk about like your on-campus support and resources, and also just what each of you did for accommodations and how you sort of familiarized yourself going on campus for the first time with disability services and all of those resources that are available to you. So definitely encourage all of the parents and caregivers and young adults here to do some research on the specifics of disability support communities and the services offices at the schools that you're looking at, because it's super helpful information. And we also have some really great resources on those in our resource hub as well. So make sure to check out the Diabetes Links Resource Hub. I'm actually going to drop a few resources in the chat just related to some of the things that we've been talking about today. One of these is like a little infographic. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like an infographic to help you narrow down some of your choices. It's like a little worksheet you can work through. Yeah, check it out because it's super cool. So for our next topic of discussion, for each of you, obviously you made it through the college search process. You successfully chose a college and found a community that works for you, and you're thriving in the community that you're in, which is great. So I would just love to hear from each of you. What is your favorite thing about the university that you chose? So think specifically about what made you feel most confident and comfortable on campus, both with diabetes and just related to like living on your own and being independent for the first time. And then also think about, is there anything that you would do differently if you could go back and tell your younger self anything about the college search process and just that transitional period of your life? What would it be?
I think my favorite part about TCNJ would be just like I guess like the small size of the campus. Like it's not too big and it's not too small, but it's like very like homey feeling. And I feel like it's a very like diverse community, which I really like, and how everybody's like different. But I mean, majority of us are from New Jersey, but it's still cool to see all the different cultures and different types of people and their like how they've gotten here, and it's just very cool to see. And then I think Anything I would do differently, I would probably just be more like, I don't know. I don't know if I can be like less anxious. I'm always anxious, but probably less anxious about the transition. I know it's like a very scary time, but just try to like embrace the change, and even if it's like feels weird, just know it's gonna be okay in the end. That's what I recommend. Yeah, like yeah.
Um, I love William and Mary. It's beautiful and it's like been so fulfilling for me these past 2 years. I would say like one of the best things about it is like I would say the size. I applied to a lot of like medium to small liberal arts colleges. Some were like even smaller than my high school, and I like really wanted that like niche community, but I found that like about 7,000 undergrad is like even enough where you can like recognize faces, which I wouldn't even think is possible because I was like, that's so many people. But I would say like the size of the school was really important to me when it comes to like finding your community and like kind of feeling at home. Just kind of like seeing those familiar faces and everything like that was really helpful for me. I would also say like proximity, like in campus and off campus. So I also liked being like 2.5 hours from home. I kind of wanted that even before I was diagnosed with type 1. But as an in-state student, like having telehealth visits and like being able to like come home for like a weekend is really like essential for me as well. I would also say like in campus, like having that health center in the middle of campus. I also have for my housing accommodations, I have like a geographical accommodation where I have to be within a certain distance of a dining hall at all, like in my like dorm, which helps like um when I'm maybe low or like kind of hungry and like I kind of want to get like a meal quickly, as a campus that like doesn't really have cars as undergrad. So I would say proximity, like inside your campus, like kind of looking at like a little map of it and seeing like where everything's laid out is something I didn't really think of, but like I would say like the campus layout of William and Mary is really ideal and walkable for students, especially like those with disabilities. Um, Something I would do different. Well, for me, my college transition was really hard because I'm a twin. I have a twin sister and she's my best friend. And this was like going to be the first year we were going to be apart. And so that was already a really hard like thing for me to kind of like digest, but also like I put so much pressure on myself during the college admission process for like perfection and like kind of like wanting to get like accepted everywhere and have a ton of options. Um, which just in this day and age is like um not like unrealistic, but like I would say like I didn't really prepare myself mentally to like face any type of rejection during the process. I put a lot of pressure on myself to like get in. I did ED1 to a different school and I didn't get in, and that was really hard for me. But like looking back on the process, like I ended up exactly where I needed to be, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to have it all perfect. Also, like figure it out really, really early, which is very unrealistic because, it's totally normal to find out where you're going to go like late into your senior year or like kind of not in the fall. And that's totally fine. Um, but I would say like, I after I got diagnosed, like during move-in, like I had a very successful process with like getting acclimated to the school with like orientation, everything. Like the colleges do a really great job acclimating new students, but I would say like in junior and senior year of high school, kind of like um my mindset and like how I approach things was something that I definitely would have done differently.
And I think some of my favorite things about UVA were I like the size. I sort of wanted a bigger college. UVA is 16,000 undergrads, which was pretty much the upper bound of how big of a college I was looking for. But I liked how I got to like do all the things that sort of felt like typical college stuff, like, you know, going to football games and complaining about the gross dining hall food and living in a hall dorm my first year with, a bunch of people and like all those things. I was also really grateful to have sort of found my way into some of the really cool diabetes research that was happening at UVA. I think that is, again, another serendipitous, um, sort of just like part of my experience was that um, I wound up at a college with a big hospital and a big research presence, and that meant that I got to be a trial in studies um, and end up even actually working um, as a tech at the Center for Diabetes Technology at UVA. So that was like, again, something that I sort of stumbled into. It wasn't something I knew on day one I was seeking out, but I think I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to explore those things. And I would say, what would I have done differently? I think I probably, beat myself up a good bit in terms of like asking for things that I needed and feeling sort of guilty or bad about that, especially when it came to things that felt like perks to other people. Extra time, having snacks, like, no, you can't have a fruit snack. That's my medicine. Like, these are things that I feel like, uh, you know, we're often told from, of, whenever you first get diagnosed onward. And I sort of forgot about some of those things just because I was in a new environment. Um, so, don't regret taking that extra time. Don't regret emailing that professor like, hey, I was in the middle of cramming this essay like everyone else is doing, and my blood sugar went low at the bottom of the ninth. So I would love an extension. Like, that's okay. Like, you can ask for those things. Um, so, oh, also what I would do differently, fanny packs are back. I did not wear a fanny pack at all because I thought they, weren't cool, but like look like now I'm a crossbody bag supporting individual, and I keep like a glucagon and fruit snacks and like my wallet and like all of these things. I think um I spent way too much of college not using a fanny pack. So would definitely encourage myself to hop on that wave a little sooner.
Can I add one thing to that statement? So I was like a big fanny pack girl when I did the like over the crossbody thing when like there's like situations where you like might not need a backpack, but like for females, like if you don't feel like you want, like there are a lot of great like bag options out there, but what I do is I have like the mini Lululemon like backpack. It's like little tiny and like I put it and like clip it to my jeans. So like um I would also say like being prepared and like always having stuff on you and like kind of like don't always be like willing or like think like, oh, someone else has this on them. Like I would in college, like make sure that you have all of your diabetes supplies on you wherever you go. But yeah, I just wanted to add that.
I love that. I love, yes, fanny packs are back. For sure. But yeah, those are some really great points to kind of end on for our last topic. Thomas, I love what you said too about like not being afraid to be an advocate for yourself. It can definitely be a difficult thing, and I think when you've had diabetes for a long time, it is easy to forget if you're moving into like a new environment. So yeah, don't be afraid to be an advocate for yourself and also to rely on your support network. That's what's so great about having other friends with diabetes and roommates or family members that you can trust to talk to about some of this stuff. Um, yeah, but it's a learning process. And I know it's probably scary for a lot of the juniors and seniors on here. But you might make mistakes and that's okay. And you'll learn from them. And yeah, you'll have a great time in college and hopefully we'll be set up for success. Um, yeah, thank you guys so much. Any last piece of advice from our guest speakers that you'd want to add just for our listeners? And then we'll move into some of our questions.
I would say Thomas's last like point like brought up like kind of something that I struggled with in college was like kind of recognizing that I have a disability. I feel like a lot of people, and like myself included, I didn't really think of type 1 as a disability. I kind of didn't feel like putting it first sometimes, or like kind of um, recognizing like this was something that I like really needed to prioritize. But I kind of have like framed that mind, like my mindset of this is really like important. Again, like also like not being afraid to ask for help, not being afraid to like prioritize yourself and your diabetes, because we require a little bit more effort put into a little bit more places where some people may not. Um, and I would say like learning to really like put myself first in a moment where like I need to ask for an extension, like use an accommodation, or kind of even in social settings, like cancel a plan, like everything like that was something that I struggled with. But like I would say that was also part of the fact that I'm like more newly diagnosed. But I would say like in college, as you're like going into like independent living, like now is like a better time than ever to really learn like how to put yourself first.
Absolutely. Great point. Oh, Thomas, did you want to?
I was actually wondering if I could respond to the question in the chat. I didn't
Yeah,
mean
we
to,
can.
jump ahead, but I just,
No worries. Yeah,
I
let's
was thinking
continue.
about it. Um, about roommates. That was also if I remember right, a conversation with my student disability access advisor. I don't exactly recall how that conversation went, but because I think it was an option. Like, if you think this is important for you to either have one or not, we can sort of write that into sort of what we can provide for you going forward. That said, I had a roommate and I was grateful for it. And this is, even when I moved off grounds and I had, three roommates instead of one roommate, like I always had the like glucagon conversation, the like, here's where I keep the like giant box of Welch's conversation. Like it was quick, it wasn't like, there was some big like, rah, rah, rah. But that said, I think I imagine from my parents' perspective, that was a bit of a peace of mind thing, just because there was someone else who was gonna put eyes on me every day, that they, put a face to. Um, so, everyone complains about having to, share a room with, or, someone they, don't know, or like I didn't know him going in. But looking back, would recommend a roommate. Because even if you aren't the best of friends, I think there's a lot of learning about yourself and growth that happens with that. And from a safety perspective, it's like it's a little peace of mind. Um, so yeah, highly recommend roommate, especially if this is going to be your first time living on your own.
I agree. I also had a roommate freshman year, and I knew her a little bit before going into it, like texting wise. Um, but I was very grateful to have a roommate because sometimes, like, when I'm a heavy sleeper, and sometimes I wouldn't even hear my decks come, and she'd wake me up. She'd be like, "You're low, you need to drink something." Or even like my mom, like she'd call my roommate if I wasn't answering and be like, "Is she okay?" Yeah. But I thought it was very helpful just so that they were aware, and also explaining like the different alarms and what they mean. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's really beneficial. Like I have three roommates now in my apartment, and I still feel the same way.
I have like a unique take on this, I feel like, because I had a roommate last year, and then this year I'm living in a single, so I don't have a roommate. Um, I would say a lot of it also like diabetic related is like also your personality type. So like I would say like if you're more extroverted, like I would say like going for a roommate is like awesome. I would say I run a little bit more introverted, like in my room, like I kind of use it as like a space to recharge. So I would say like having my single now has been really awesome in that capacity. However, I will kind of agree with everyone that I would say like at least your freshman year, it's really awesome to have a roommate because like one for safety, but two, I feel like it's a very traditional college experience that I feel like everyone should go through. And then for the next question, my roommate never complained because she knew it was like my life was at risk. I would also say like I like responded to my alarms. Like mine was like super loud and like I kind of self-relied on myself for all of my like lows and everything overnight and stuff. So like that's why having like a single was kind of not like that difficult of a conversation with my family because they knew that I kind of I've got it, like I have it on track. But like I would say like yes, it probably could be a little bit annoying for roommates to hear the alarms, but like mine were super understanding because they knew it was like my life on the line. And then also like making sure that I had that like conversation beforehand so it wasn't like startling, kind of like setting expectations, setting like you know what to expect in the beginning of the year was really important for my roommate and I last year.
Yeah, I would say if my roommate ever got frustrated, he didn't say anything about it, in any serious sense. Like, yeah, there was some joking, like, uh-oh, Thomas is dying again, the next day, or, something like that. But I mean, it was always lighthearted. He never expressed anything that was like, this is a serious bother to me. And again, it depends on everyone, how deep everyone sleeps, and that's a lot of circumstances outside of people's control. But I think he understood that, like, yeah, like, like everyone's been saying, like this is not my ringer on my cell phone because my friends are texting. Like this is my health. And I think, you know, there's a lot of like, respect I think that came from my roommate because I trusted him with some information about myself and some medical knowledge about like what's a glucagon and like, oh, I could help my roommate out if he was really in deep trouble. And I think, you know, that feeling of that I trusted him with that and was sort of like it's not all just annoyances that come with having a roommate with diabetes.
Any other questions from our audience? You can ask about anything related to the college search, college experience. No? Okay. Well, with that, I guess we will wrap up for the night. Thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to our guest speakers for being authentic and for sharing all of your experiences and providing some encouragement to the young adults who are here tonight. I'm sure they really appreciate it. For those of us or for caregivers who are on, make sure to check out the resource hub that we mentioned earlier. Lots of great resources on there for the college search, accommodations, and also make sure to check out our remaining off to college sessions that are coming up this year, because we'll be talking about lots of other great topics as well. For young adults who are on here, if you're interested in getting a head start on meeting some other young people with diabetes, check out our Discord. I don't know if we can maybe drop the link to that, Andrea, but we actually have a specific Discord channel for high schoolers with diabetes. So that's a really great way to meet some people even prior to joining a chapter on your college campus. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and we really appreciate it. There's the link to the Discord. Perfect.